Part 1. First Contact Gone Wrong. The stars looked different out here. Captain Sarah Chen pressed her face against the observation window of the UES Defiance and watched the distant suns shimmer like diamonds scattered across black velvet. 3. Months they had been traveling through this unexplored sector, mapping systems and looking for signs of life. So far, they had found nothing but empty planets and dead rocks. "Captain," called Lieutenant Torres from the communications station. "I'm picking up something strange on long-range sensors." Chen pushed herself away from the window and floated over to the command chair. The bridge of the Defiance was cramped and functional, all metal walls and blinking lights. Everything was built to last, not to look pretty. That was the human way. If it worked, it was good enough. "What kind of strange?" she asked, strapping herself into the chair. Torres frowned at his screen. "Multiple contacts, ma'am. Big ones, really big. They're not moving like asteroids or debris." Chen felt her heart skip. After months of empty space, this could be it. First contact with alien life. "How many contacts?" 12 ships, Captain. Each one is... Jesus, they're huge. The smallest one is 3 times bigger than our entire fleet. The Defiance was traveling with 4 other human ships. The Necessity carried supplies and equipment. The Pioneer and Explorer were science vessels. The Guardian was their only real warship, though it was small compared to military vessels back home. Together, they made up Exploration Fleet 7, humanity's furthest reach into unknown space. "Red alert," Chen ordered. "All ships, battle stations, but keep weapons powered down. We don't want to look hostile." The bridge filled with the sound of alarms and running feet. Chen opened a channel to the other ships. "This is Admiral Chen to all vessels. We may have found what we came looking for. Remember, we represent all of humanity out here. Let's make a good first impression." The alien ships appeared on the main screen as they got closer. Chen had seen many beautiful things in space, but these vessels took her breath away. They looked like they were made of crystal and light, their hulls smooth and perfect. No welds, no seams, no ugly metal patches like human ships had. They moved through space like dancers, graceful and silent. "My God," whispered Commander Rodriguez, from the Guardian. "They're beautiful." The alien ships arranged themselves in a perfect formation around the human fleet. Chen counted them again. 12 ships, each one massive and gleaming. The humans looked like toys next to them, small and crude with their metal hulls and visible engines. "Open all communication channels," Chen ordered. "All frequencies. Let's try to talk to them." Torres worked at his station for several minutes. Finally, he looked up. "Channel open, Captain. Broadcasting on all frequencies." Chen took a deep breath. This was the moment humanity had dreamed of for centuries. "Unknown vessels. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Defiance. We come in peace, representing the human species from the planet Earth. We seek friendship and knowledge. Please respond." The response came immediately, but it wasn't what Chen expected. A sound filled the bridge, a high musical noise that rose and fell like laughter. But it wasn't friendly laughter. It was the sound someone makes when they see something funny and pathetic. The laughter went on for almost a minute. Chen's crew looked at each other with confusion and growing anger. Finally, the laughter stopped, and a voice spoke in perfect English. "Humans?" The voice was smooth and cultured, like a professor talking to stupid children. "Did you say humans? Oh, this is rich, absolutely delicious." Chen kept her voice calm and professional. "Yes, we are human. May I ask who I am speaking with?" "I am Fleet Commander Zix Thalen of the Galactic Empire, 3rd Expansion Fleet." The alien's voice dripped with amusement. "And you little humans are the most entertaining thing I have seen in decades." More laughter came from the alien ships. Chen could hear dozens of voices now, all laughing at the humans. Her crew's faces grew red with anger. but she held up a hand to keep them quiet. "We are honored to meet representatives of the Galactic Empire," she said. "We hope we can establish peaceful relations between our species." Peaceful relations? Zixthalan's laughter became even louder. "Oh, you poor, stupid little creatures. Look at your ships, metal and rivets and chemical rockets. We stopped using such primitive technology 10,000 years ago. Your vessels look like they were built by children playing with scrap metal." Chen felt her jaw clench, but she forced herself to stay calm. "Our technology may seem primitive to you, but it has served us well. We have explored many star systems and—" Explored? Zixthalan interrupted. "You call this exploring? Crawling through space in those pathetic metal cans? My people were building star-spanning empires when your ancestors were still living in caves and eating raw meat." The insults continued for several minutes. Zixthalan described human ships as space junk and flying garbage cans. He called humans barely evolved apes and cosmic joke. His crew laughed at every insult, their voices echoing across all communication channels. Chen's knuckles turned white as she gripped her chair. Around her, the bridge crew muttered angry curses under their breath. Lieutenant Torres looked ready to punch something. Even the usually calm Commander Park had fire in her eyes. "Sir," Chen said, her voice tight with controlled anger, "we have offered you friendship. We mean you no harm. All we ask is safe passage through this sector so we can continue our mission." "Safe passage?" Zixthalan sounded delighted. "Oh my! Dear primitive human, you misunderstand. You don't get safe passage. You surrender. Immediately. Your little tin cans and their amusing crews will make excellent additions to my collection of conquered curiosities." Chen felt ice form in her stomach. "Collection?" "Oh, yes," the alien commander purred. "I collect interesting species. The more primitive and pathetic, the better. Your people will make wonderful entertainment for the Empire. We'll put you in cages and let civilized beings marvel at how such crude creatures manage to stumble into space." The bridge fell silent. Chen looked around at her crew, seeing the same cold anger in their eyes that she felt in her heart. These aliens weren't just insulting them. They were talking about enslaving humanity. "Commander Zixthalan," she said slowly, "I believe there has been a misunderstanding. We are not surrendering. We are a free people from a sovereign world. We demand safe passage." The laughter that answered her was cruel and mocking. "Demand? You? You're barely more intelligent than the animals on my homeworld. Your technology is worthless. Your ships are scrap metal. Your species is a cosmic accident that never should have left its home planet." Zixthalan's voice became harder. "I am being generous by keeping you alive. Surrender now, and I might let some of your species live as curiosities. Refuse, and I will take your ships anyway, but I'll space your crews first." Chen closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they were cold as space itself. "All human vessels, this is the Admiral. We are withdrawing from this area immediately. All ships prepare for emergency acceleration." "Withdrawing?" Zixthalan laughed again. "Oh, you sweet, naive little creature. Did you really think I would let you leave? No, no, no. You belong to me now." The alien ships began to move, their crystal hulls glowing brighter. They arranged themselves to block the human fleet's escape routes, moving with impossible grace and speed. "My vessels are faster than yours," Zixthalan said pleasantly. "My weapons are more powerful than yours. My shields are stronger than your entire fleet. You cannot run. You cannot fight. You can only surrender and hope I remain in a good mood." Chen looked at the tactical display. The alien commander was right. The human ships were surrounded and outgunned. But as she stared at the overwhelming odds, something in her chest began to burn. It wasn't fear, it was anger. Pure, cold, human anger. "Commander Zixthalan," she said quietly, You have made one mistake. Oh? And what is that, little human? Chen's smile was sharp as a blade. You think we're harmless? The alien's laughter echoed through space one more time. He had no idea that he had just made the worst mistake of his very long life. Part 2. Underestimation and Escalation. Fleet Commander Zix Thalan floated in the command center of his flagship, the Eternal Glory. His crystalline body pulsed with soft blue light, showing his amusement. Around him, his crew worked at stations that looked more like art than technology, smooth surfaces that responded to thought as much as touch. "Did you hear that?" he asked his second-in-command. "The little human thinks they're dangerous. How delightful." Sub-Commander Yilthos rippled with purple patterns of laughter. "Should we destroy them quickly, sir? Their primitive weapons cannot even scratch our shields." Zix Thalan waved a translucent hand. No, that would be wasteful. These humans are perfect specimens. Just advanced enough to be interesting, but too primitive to be a real threat. I want their ships intact." He touched his command surface and spoke to all 12 ships in his fleet. "Attention all vessels. We will disable the human ships with minimum force. Set plasma cannons to lowest power, just enough to cripple their engines. I want the crews alive and their primitive technology undamaged. The Empire's scientists will want to study both." On the main viewer, the 5 human ships looked tiny and fragile. Zix Thalan's tactical officer had already analyzed their construction. Metal hulls welded together like ancient ocean vessels, chemical rockets that burned fuel like torches, nuclear reactors that were barely more advanced than controlled bombs. It was like finding cave paintings in a museum of galactic art. "Sir," called the tactical officer, "the human ships are attempting to retreat." "Of course they are," Zix Thalan said with satisfaction. "Finally showing some sense, but we cannot let them leave. They have seen us now. They know the Empire exists. We must take them before they can warn their homeworld." The alien fleet moved to intercept the fleeing humans. Their ships flowed through space like liquid mercury, powered by energy systems the humans couldn't even imagine. Where human ships had to push against space with crude rockets, the Empire vessels bent space itself to move. Within minutes, the superior alien technology closed the gap. The human ships, struggling with their chemical engines, were completely surrounded. "This is almost sad," Zix Thalan said, watching the humans try desperately to escape. "They're like insects trapped in amber. All that effort, all that panic, and they cannot move fast enough to matter." He opened a channel to the human admiral. "Admiral Chen, I hope you can see the futility of your situation. My ships are faster, stronger, and more advanced than anything your species can imagine. Stop wasting fuel and surrender peacefully." The human woman's voice came back hard and cold. "We don't surrender to bullies." More laughter rippled through the alien bridge. "Bullies? Oh, my dear primitive creature. We are not bullies. We are simply superior. It is natural law. The advanced species guide the primitive ones. We will take good care of your people, I promise." "Like pets?" Chen asked. "Exactly like pets," Zix Thalan agreed cheerfully. "Well-fed, well-housed pets who will never have to worry about the dangers of space again. You should thank us." What happened next surprised him. Instead of continuing to flee, the human ships began to turn around. They were moving toward his fleet, not away from it. "Sir," his tactical officer said with confusion, "the humans are approaching us directly." Zix Thalan studied the display. The 5 primitive ships were indeed closing distance, their engines burning at maximum power. "How curious. Are they planning to ram us? Their ships would shatter like glass against our shields." "Perhaps they are finally surrendering," suggested Yilthos. "Coming close to make the capture easier." "Yes, that must be it," Zix Thalan decided. "They have realized the hopelessness of their situation. How sensible of them. Power down weapons and prepare boarding parties." I want to examine these humans in person. Across the Empire fleet, plasma cannons stopped charging. Energy shields shifted to capture mode rather than combat mode. Boarding shuttles prepared to launch. The aliens had faced this situation thousands of times before. Primitive species who realized they were outmatched and gave up without a fight. But something felt different about these humans. Their approach was too aggressive, too determined, for a surrender. Admiral Chen's voice came over the communications again, and this time she wasn't talking to the aliens. She was talking to her own ships. All human vessels, this is Admiral Chen. Emergency Protocol 7 is now in effect. I repeat, Emergency Protocol 7. All hands, prepare for final action. Zix Thalan frowned. What is Emergency Protocol 7? His communications officer quickly translated and analyzed human military codes. After a few moments, he looked up with confusion. Sir, I cannot find any reference to Emergency Protocol 7 in human military databases. Then, what are they talking about? I don't know, sir. Either it's a code we haven't broken, or what? Or they made it up just now, sir. The human ships were getting closer now, their metal hulls scarred and ugly compared to the graceful Empire vessels. Zix Thalan could see their primitive weapons, railguns and missile tubes that looked like toys. Some of the human ships had strange modifications, patches and additions that made no sense to his orderly mind. Sir, the tactical officer called out with more urgency, the human ship Defiance is on a collision course with us. They're not slowing down. They wouldn't dare, Zix Thalan said, but uncertainty crept into his voice. Impact with our shields would vaporize their entire ship. Should we raise combat shields, sir? Zix Thalan hesitated. Raising shields would take several minutes, and it seemed like such an overreaction to these primitive humans. Surely they would veer off at the last moment. No species was stupid enough to crash into a superior enemy for no reason. Sir! The tactical officer's voice was urgent now. All human ships are on intercept courses. They show no signs of changing direction. For the first time in centuries, Zix Thalan felt something he had almost forgotten. Uncertainty. These humans were not behaving like any species he had encountered before. Civilized races negotiated, primitive races fled or surrendered. But these humans were doing something else entirely. What are they doing? He whispered. Admiral Chen's voice came over the communications one final time, broadcasting to all ships, human and alien alike. Her voice was calm, steady, and terrifyingly determined. To any Empire forces listening, you called us primitive. You called us pets. You threatened to cage our people like animals. She paused, and when she continued, her voice was ice cold. You're about to learn what happens when you threaten human freedom. On the tactical display, Zix Thalan watched the 5 human ships spread out in attack formation. But it wasn't any attack formation he recognized from military databases. It looked random, chaotic, like the humans were making it up as they went along. This is impossible, he said to himself. No species fights like this. No species throws away their lives for no strategic gain. His second-in-command was pulsing with nervous yellow light. Sir, should we raise shields? Should we power weapons? Zix Thalan stared at the approaching human ships. Logic said they would turn away. Every military manual in the Empire said that inferior forces did not attack superior ones without overwhelming numbers or strategic advantage. The humans had neither, but something in Admiral Chen's voice made his crystalline skin crawl with unease. These humans weren't acting logically. They weren't following any rules of civilized warfare. They were doing something that the Empire's perfect military computers couldn't predict because it was completely insane. Sir! The tactical officer's voice cracked with panic. Impact in 30 seconds! Finally, Zix Thalan's survival instincts overcame his arrogance. Emergency shields! All weapons to full power! All ships! Combat formation! But it was too late. The Empire ships had been configured for capture, not combat. Their shields were down, their weapons offline, their crews completely unprepared for what was about to happen. The humans had used the Empire's own arrogance against them. By appearing harmless and primitive, by approaching like they were surrendering, they had caught the superior alien fleet completely off guard. 20 seconds to impact! Zixthalan gripped his command station as alarms began wailing throughout his ship. For the first time in his long military career, he realized he might have made a terrible mistake. These humans weren't primitive pets. They were something far more dangerous. They were completely, utterly unpredictable, and they were coming straight for his ships. Part 3. The Human Response. Controlled chaos, the Defiant struck the Empire flagship like a metal fist, punching through crystal glass. Admiral Chen had ordered her ship's nose reinforced with every spare piece of metal they could find. Now that improvised battering rams smashed through the alien vessel's sensor array in a shower of sparks and debris. But the collision was just the beginning. "Now!" Chen shouted over the screaming alarms. The Defiance opened its waste storage bays and dumped 20 tons of radioactive nuclear waste directly into the Empire ship's exposed systems. The radioactive materials created an electromagnetic pulse that spread through the alien vessel like lightning, frying delicate circuits and blinding sensors. Across the battlefield, the other human ships executed their own parts of emergency. Protocol 7, a plan that had never been written down because no sane military would ever approve it. The Pioneer vented its entire atmosphere in one massive burst, creating a cloud of ice crystals and debris around itself. Then Captain Martinez triggered the ship's self-destruct, turning the Pioneer into a massive fragmentation grenade that sprayed metal shards in all directions. 3 Empire ships found their perfect hulls suddenly punctured by thousands of tiny holes. The Explorer had taken a different approach. Captain Singh had ordered his crew to load the ship's scientific probe launcher with everything they could find: tools, spare parts, even the contents of the mess hall freezer. When the Empire ships got close, the Explorer fired its improvised ammunition like a shotgun blast. Frozen vegetables and metal wrenches moving at high speed punched through alien shields that were designed to stop energy weapons. Not physical objects, but the most creative destruction came from the Guardian, their only real warship. Commander Rodriguez had realized that the Empire ships were too advanced for conventional weapons, so she stopped fighting conventionally. The Guardian fired its railgun, but not at the enemy ships. Instead, it fired at its own escape pods, launching them like bullets toward the Empire vessels. Each pod was packed with high explosives and programmed to detonate on impact. The aliens watched in confusion as dozens of small objects streaked toward them, moving too fast and too small for their weapons to track effectively. The explosions lit up space like deadly fireworks. Fleet Commander Zixthalan clung to his command station as his flagship shook from secondary explosions. Half his bridge crew was unconscious, and the other half was struggling to understand damage reports that made no sense. "Sir," gasped his tactical officer, blue fluid leaking from a head wound. "The humans, they're not fighting like any species in our databases." "I can see that," Zixthalan snapped, watching another Empire ship list helplessly as its engines failed. "What kind of military uses suicide attacks as a first resort?" "They're not military tactics, sir," the officer replied, studying his damaged displays. They're improvisation. They're making it up as they go along." Through the chaos, Admiral Chen's voice came over the communication channels, calm and steady despite the destruction around her. "All Empire vessels. This is Admiral Chen. You wanted to see primitive human technology? This is it. We take whatever we have and turn it into a weapon." Zixthalan tried to respond, but his communication systems were still scrambled by the radioactive pulse. He could only watch as the humans continued their insane assault. The supply ship Necessity had been hanging back, apparently trying to flee the battle. Zixthalan's remaining ships moved to intercept it, thinking it would be an easy capture. The supply ship immediately began broadcasting surrender signals and stopped its engines. Finally, Zixthalan muttered. At least one of them has sense. His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Yilthos, was trying to coordinate the remaining Empire ships. "Sir, should we accept their surrender?" "Yes, bring that ship in. We need at least one intact human vessel to study." 3 Empire ships moved toward the Necessity, their capture beams ready. The human ship looked completely helpless. No weapons visible, engines offline, crew probably terrified. It was exactly what the Empire expected from a primitive species, faced with overwhelming force. Captain O'Brien of the Necessity watched the alien ship's approach on her small bridge. Her crew was nervous but determined. Unlike the other ships, the Necessity hadn't been modified for combat. It was exactly what it appeared to be, a supply vessel carrying equipment and materials for the exploration mission. "Captain," asked Lieutenant Kim, "are you sure about this?" O'Brien smiled grimly. "The Admiral's plan is crazy, but crazy is what we're good at." She activated the ship's internal communication. "All hands, prepare for Emergency Protocol 7, Phase 2. It's been an honor serving with you." The Empire ships drew closer, their elegant hulls gleaming in the starlight. Their commanders were probably feeling relieved. Finally, a human ship that was behaving rationally. They had no idea that the Necessity was carrying mining charges. Lots of mining charges, all of them connected to the ship's reactor in a configuration that no safety manual would ever approve. When the Empire flagship came within 100 meters, Captain O'Brien pushed a single button. The explosion could be seen from the other side of the star system. The Necessity vanished in a ball of nuclear fire that instantly vaporized 2 Empire ships and sent the flagship spinning away like a broken toy. The blast wave hit the other Empire vessels like a giant hammer, cracking their perfect hulls and overloading their energy systems. Zixthalan found himself floating in a bridge filled with smoke and flashing emergency lights. His beautiful crystalline ship was dying around him, its systems failing one by one. Through the chaos, he could hear damage reports that painted a picture of total disaster. "Sir," wheezed his communications officer, "we've lost contact with 7 ships. 3 more are heavily damaged. The humans, they destroyed themselves to hurt us." "That's impossible," Zixthalan said weakly. "No species does that. No rational being trades their life for tactical advantage. The humans do, sir." On the main viewer, now cracked and flickering, Zixthalan could see the remaining battlefield. 5 human ships had become debris fields scattered across space. But they had taken 8 of his 12 vessels with them. His perfect, advanced, superior fleet had been gutted by what he had called flying garbage cans. The surviving Empire ships were trying to regroup, but their crews were shaken. They had never faced an enemy that fought like this, an enemy that turned every piece of equipment into a weapon, that sacrificed themselves without hesitation, that improvised destruction from whatever they had at hand. Admiral Chen's final transmission echoed through the damaged alien ships. "To the Galactic Empire, you called us primitive. You said we were pets, but we are human beings, and we bow to no one. Remember this day. Remember what happens when you threaten human freedom." Zixthalan stared at the debris field where both fleets had died. For the first time in his centuries of military service, he felt something he had never experienced before: respect for an enemy. These humans hadn't won through superior technology or brilliant strategy. They had won through sheer, bloody-minded determination to make their enemies pay for every insult, every threat, every moment of arrogance. They had turned their own destruction into victory by refusing to die alone. "Sir," his tactical officer said quietly, "what do we do now?" Zixthalan looked around his ruined bridge, at his wounded crew, at the scattered remains of what had been the Empire's 3rd expansion fleet. "We send a message to High Command," he said finally. "We tell them, we have encountered something new, something dangerous, Something that fights like nothing we have ever seen before. He paused, watching a piece of human debris drift past his viewport. A metal plate with words burned into it. UES Defiance, Earth remembers. We tell them, Zixthalan continued, that the humans are not primitive pets. They are weapons. Weapons that think and adapt and refuse to be conquered. In the cold vacuum of space, the wreckage of 2 fleets drifted silently among the stars. But the real battle was just beginning. Part 4. Empire in Disarray Fleet. Commander Zixthalan floated in what had once been the command center of the Eternal Glory. Now it looked like a war zone. Broken crystal displays hung from twisted metal supports. Emergency lights cast eerie shadows across damaged walls. The air tasted of smoke and fear. "Status report," he ordered, his voice hoarse from breathing the acrid atmosphere. Subcommander Yil Thos consulted a damaged tablet, one of the few working devices left on the bridge. "4 ships completely destroyed, sir. 3 more are dead. In space. No power, no life support. The divine purpose and stellar majesty are barely functional. The infinite wisdom lost half its crew when the humans detonated that thing." Zixthalan closed his eyes. 12 ships. He had started this encounter with 12 perfect advanced warships crewed by the Empire's finest warriors. Now he had 4 damaged vessels and hundreds of dead. And the humans? All destroyed, sir. Every ship. Then why? Zixthalan asked quietly. "Do I feel like we lost?" For 300 years, Zixthalan had served the Empire. He had conquered 47 different species across a dozen star systems. Some had fought with courage, others had surrendered with dignity. A few had tried to negotiate, but none had ever done what the humans did. None had ever turned their own destruction into a weapon. "Sir," called the communications officer from across the ruined bridge, "we're receiving a transmission from the Divine Purpose. Captain Morthek wants to know when rescue ships will arrive." Zixthalan laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Tell Captain Morthek that rescue ships are on their way, but it will be several days before they reach us. Several days floating in damaged ships, breathing recycled air and eating emergency rations. Several days to think about what had happened here. Several days to wonder how 5 primitive human vessels had destroyed the pride of the Empire's 3rd expansion fleet." "Sir," Yil Thos said carefully, "perhaps we should discuss our report to High Command. How do we explain this disaster?" Zixthalan turned to look at his second-in-command. Yil Thos was young for an Empire officer, barely 2 centuries old. He had never seen real combat before today. None of them had. The Empire's wars were usually quick and one-sided affairs against inferior species. "What would you suggest we tell them?" Zixthalan asked. "Well, we could say the humans had hidden weapons, secret technology. Perhaps they were more advanced than they appeared. And when the Empire sends investigators to examine the wreckage, when they see that every human weapon was exactly as primitive as it looked, what then?" Yil Thos shifted uncomfortably. Then we tell the truth?" "The truth." Zixthalan moved to what remained of the main viewport and stared out at the debris field. "The truth is that we were defeated by creatures using nuclear waste as weapons. The truth is that they turned their own supply ship into the largest bomb in known military history. The truth is that they fought like no civilized species has ever fought." A piece of human debris drifted past the viewport, part of the Pioneer's hull with human writing still visible. "Freedom or death." Zixthalan had run that phrase through the translation computers. Such a simple concept, but one that the Empire had never encountered before. "Sir," the communications officer called out again, "I'm picking up long-range transmissions, multiple sources. The humans weren't alone in this system." Zixthalan felt ice form in his blood. "What do you mean?" Automated beacons, sir. Hidden. Throughout the system. They've been recording everything and transmitting it back toward human space. The battle, our conversations, everything. The full horror of the situation hit Zixthalan like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just fought them. They had made sure their deaths would be witnessed. Somewhere in human space, military commanders were watching recordings of this battle. They were seeing how 5 human ships had crippled an Empire fleet. They were learning that the mighty Galactic Empire could be hurt. "How long have the beacons been transmitting?" he asked. "Since before we arrived, sir." "The humans must have placed them when they first entered the system." "Then they knew," Zixthalan whispered. "They knew this might happen. They planned for it." The implications were staggering. The humans hadn't stumbled into this encounter by accident. They had come prepared for the possibility of meeting hostile aliens. More importantly, they had come prepared to die in a way that would send a message. That message was now racing through space toward Earth at faster-than-light speeds, on. The divine purpose, Captain Morthek was having his own crisis of faith. His ship had survived the human attack, but barely. The elegant curves of his vessel were now scarred with impact craters and burn marks. Half his crew was injured, and the other half was asking questions he couldn't answer. "Captain," his engineering officer said, "I've been analyzing the human attack patterns. None of this makes sense according to our military databases." "Explain." "Well, sir, they use tactics that guarantee mutual destruction. No species does that unless they're facing extinction. But these humans weren't fighting for their homeworld or their species. They were just exploring." Morthek had been thinking the same thing. "So why did they fight so hard?" "That's what I can't understand, sir. Our intelligence said humans were just another primitive species, but primitive species don't fight like this. They either submit to superior force or they flee. They don't—" He gestured helplessly at the debris field. "They don't do whatever this was." The engineer was young, like most of the Empire's officers. The Empire had been so successful for so long that most of its military had never seen real combat. They had learned warfare from textbooks and simulations, not from the bloody reality of species that refused to follow the rules. "Maybe," Morthek said slowly. "We don't understand humans as well as we thought." On the barely functional Stellar Majesty, Commander Velthara was reading reports that made no sense. Her analysts had examined every piece of human wreckage they could recover, and their conclusions were disturbing. "Ma'am," her intelligence officer reported, "we've confirmed that every human weapon was exactly what it appeared to be. Primitive chemical rockets, basic nuclear reactors, simple metal projectiles. No hidden technology, no secret weapons." Then, "How did they hurt us so badly?" "They improvised, ma'am. They took normal equipment and used it in ways no rational species would consider." "Who uses mining explosives as ship-to-ship weapons? Who turns waste storage into an electromagnetic bomb? Who fires frozen food as ammunition?" Velthara studied the reports in silence. The Empire's military doctrine was based on overwhelming technological superiority. They had always assumed that advanced weapons would defeat primitive ones. But the humans had shown that technology was less important than the willingness to use it creatively, and to die using it. "Ma'am," the intelligence officer continued, "there's something else. We've been monitoring human communications frequencies. Their home system has gone silent." "Silent? No transmissions, no radio chatter, nothing. It's like their entire civilization just went dark." Velthara felt a chill run through her crystalline body. In her experience, species only went completely silent for one reason. They were preparing for war. Back on the Eternal Glory, Zixthalan was writing his report to the Empire High Command. It was the most difficult document he had ever composed. How do you explain defeat to a civilization that had never experienced it? "To the High Command of the Galactic Empire," he began, "I must report the loss of the Third Expansion Fleet during contact with the species known as humans. Of 12 vessels, 8 have been destroyed and 4 are severely damaged. All human vessels were also destroyed. He paused, staring at the words on his screen. They didn't capture the reality of what had happened here. They didn't explain the fear in his crew's eyes or the way the humans had fought like cornered animals. The humans, he continued, do not fight according to recognized military doctrine. They appear to have no concept of acceptable losses or strategic withdrawal. When faced with superior force, they do not surrender or negotiate. They attack with whatever weapons they possess, including their own ships as projectiles. Another pause. How do you explain madness to a sane civilization? I must emphasize that these humans represent a threat unlike any the Empire has previously encountered. They are not primitive in the way we understand the term. They are something else. Something dangerous, something that refuses to be conquered. He finished the report and encrypted it for transmission to the imperial capital. Soon, the Emperor and his advisors would read about the first military defeat in the Empire's 1,000-year history, and somewhere in space, the human beacons continued, their transmissions sending word of the battle to Earth. Zixthalan could only imagine what the human military was thinking as they watched recordings of their explorers dying in a blaze of improvised destruction. He suspected he would find out soon enough. Part 5. Pyrrhic Victory and Growing Respect. 3 days after the battle, rescue ships arrived from the Galactic Empire. They found 4 damaged vessels floating in a debris field that told a story no Imperial officer wanted to believe. Admiral Keth Moran, commander of the rescue fleet, boarded the Eternal Glory with a team of investigators. The pristine corridors of his flagship were a sharp contrast to the smoking ruins of Zixthalan's command ship. Everything about the rescue vessels spoke of Imperial perfection. Smooth walls, flowing designs, technology that worked flawlessly. The Eternal Glory looked like it had been through a war. "Fleet Commander," Admiral Kethamoran said as he entered the damaged bridge, "your report was difficult to believe." Zixthalan, now wearing a breathing mask due to the ship's failing life, support gestured weakly at the viewport. "See for yourself, Admiral. The evidence is all around us." Through the cracked transparent steel, they could see the wreckage, pieces of human ships mixed with the shattered remains of Imperial vessels. Metal fragments that had once been part of the Defiance drifted past chunks of crystalline hull from the Divine Purpose. "Show me how it happened," Keth Moran ordered. For the next hour, Zixthalan walked the Admiral through the battle. He showed him the recordings, the damage reports, the tactical analyses. With each piece of evidence, Kethamoran's expression grew more troubled. "You're telling me," the Admiral said finally, "that 5 primitive ships destroyed 8 Imperial warships through suicide attacks?" "Not suicide attacks," Zixthalan corrected. "Weapons. They turned themselves into weapons. Their ships, their cargo, their waste products, everything became part of their arsenal." Keth Moran studied a piece of debris that investigation teams had recovered, part of the Necessity's hull with scorch marks that told the story of its final moments. "This supply ship, you say it was loaded with mining charges?" "Enough to vaporize 2 of our vessels and cripple a 3rd. They used industrial equipment as a naval weapon." "But why?" Keth Moran asked, the question that had been haunting Zixthalan for 3 days. "Why fight so hard? They were explorers, not soldiers. Their mission was peaceful. They could have surrendered and lived." Zixthalan had been thinking about that question since the battle ended. "Because they're human, Admiral, and humans, it seems, would rather die free than live as slaves." On the other side of the galaxy, Earth was no longer the quiet, peaceful world it had been a week ago. The recordings from the battle had arrived 2 days earlier, and the planet was buzzing with activity. President Martinez stood in the war room deep beneath Geneva, surrounded by military leaders from every nation on Earth. The recordings of Admiral Chen's last stand played on screens around the room, showing humanity's first contact with alien life and humanity's first interstellar war. How long before— "They come for us?" asked General Thompson, head of the Global Defense Force. "Unknown," replied Admiral Singh, the head of the Space Navy, "but we have to assume they will come. No empire lets an attack like this go unanswered." Attack? President Martinez looked up from the casualty reports. "General, they attacked us. Admiral Chen was trying to make peaceful contact." "I know, ma'am. But from their perspective, we destroyed 8 of their ships. They'll call it an unprovoked assault on Imperial forces." Dr. Sarah Kim, the xenobiologist who had been analyzing the alien communications, spoke up from her position at the conference table. "Actually, I don't think they will." Every eye in the room turned to her. "Explain," the president ordered. "I've been studying their communications during the battle, their language, their tone, their reactions. This Commander Zix Thalan, he's not angry. He's frightened." "Frightened of us?" General Thompson laughed. "We're the primitives with metal ships, remember? That's exactly why he's frightened," Dr. Kim continued. "The Empire has rules for how warfare works. Advanced species defeat primitive ones through superior technology. But we broke those rules. We showed that technology isn't everything. We showed that determination and creativity can overcome superior firepower." She activated a holographic display showing the tactical analysis of the battle. "Look at their formations, their tactics. Everything they did was textbook perfect according to their military doctrine. But our people improvised. They adapted. They did things no military computer could predict because no sane species would consider them." President Martinez studied the display. "So what happens now?" "Two possibilities," Dr. Kim said. "Either they send a massive fleet to crush us before we can spread our madness to other species, or they try to understand us, because we've shown them something they've never seen before, a species that refuses to be conquered." Back in Imperial space, the investigation of the battle was complete. Admiral Kethamaran's report sat on the desk of Emperor Thex Andros, ruler of 1,000 worlds and conqueror of the galaxy. The Emperor was ancient even by Imperial standards, having ruled for over 8 centuries. "You believe this report?" the Emperor asked his military advisor. "I've confirmed every detail, Your Majesty. The humans fought exactly as described. They used tactics that we have no defense against." The Emperor stood and walked to the great window of his palace, looking out over the crystal spires of the imperial capital. For 1,000 years, the Empire had expanded without serious resistance. Species either joined willingly or were conquered quickly. The galaxy had become predictable, orderly, safe. "How many ships would it take to destroy their homeworld?" he asked. "A single battleship could crack their planet, Your Majesty. Their defenses are primitive. And how many humans live on their world?" "Intelligence estimates 8 billion, Your Majesty." The Emperor was quiet for a long moment. 8 billion beings who thought like Admiral Chen. 8 billion creatures who would rather die fighting than live in cages. 8 billion potential weapons. "No," he said finally, "Your Majesty. We will not attack their homeworld. Not yet." The Emperor turned from the window. "Send a single ship, a diplomatic vessel. I want to talk to these humans." His advisor looked shocked. "Diplomacy, Your Majesty, with primitives who destroyed an Imperial fleet? They're not primitives," the Emperor said, echoing Zix Thalan's words. "There's something new, something dangerous, something that fights like no species we've ever encountered." He moved to his throne, a massive crystal chair that had been carved from a single gemstone. "Admiral Chen's final message. Do you remember it?" "Yes, Your Majesty. Earth remembers." "Two words that terrify me more than any weapon," the Emperor admitted. because they mean these humans will never forget, they'll never forgive, and they'll never surrender. On the bridge of the eternal glory, now being towed back to Imperial space, Zixthalan stared at one final piece of human debris. It was a metal plate from the Defiance with a simple inscription, UES Defiance, launched 2387. We go in peace, but we're ready for war. Below that, in Admiral Chen's handwriting, someone had added, they chose war. Zixthalan understood now why the Emperor wanted to talk rather than fight. The humans had shown them something that challenged everything the Empire believed about warfare, about civilization, about the nature of intelligent life itself. They had shown that sometimes the primitive species wins, not through superior technology or brilliant strategy, but through sheer, bloody-minded refusal to accept defeat, through the willingness to turn anything, even their own destruction, into a weapon. The human ships were gone. The human crews were dead. But their message was spreading across the galaxy like wildfire. Humanity would not be conquered. Humanity would not be caged. Humanity would not bow. And if you tried to make them, they would make you pay a price you never imagined. Zixthalan looked out at the stars and wondered what would happen when the two most powerful forces in the galaxy met again, the Empire's technological perfection and humanity's absolute refusal to surrender. He suspected the galaxy was about to become a much more interesting place and a much more dangerous one.